I don't have the slides or a handout, so you'll have to indulge a couple of minutes here. Just want to share a little personal story and then talk a little bit more about how Reading Rescue lives in our school, but I think it's appropriate. The summertime, I try to get out a little bit. As a principal, we don't have a whole lot of time to enjoy ourselves through the year, so you take these moments. A couple of years back, I was out on a boat with a friend of mine. We're in Lower Harbor, in between Staten Island and New Jersey, and we came across a couple of kayakers. They were in the water, not in their kayaks, and we were in a fishing boat, and some small, just casual day, and they kind of waved to us, and we waved back, and I was trying to look to make sure everything was okay, and I gave it like one of these, and both guys put thumbs down. So we get a little bit closer to where they were, and the kayak had filled with water. They had one of those plastic plugs at the end, and it didn't quite sink, but it was no longer able to be made right. So we pulled the guys into the boat. We emptied the kayak. Took about 45 minutes or so, and then we sent them on their way. The boat's really not big enough for all of us, and we had some serious fishing to do. So I share that story. Because at the end, one of the guys said, we were in the water for about 45 minutes before you got there, and it was getting cold, and you kind of feel the chill when you're in the water that long. And if we lost the kayak, we would have had to swim back after that point. So it was kind of urgent, and the idea of urgency, kind of resonates. As a principal, there's so much urgency that goes on. There's so much of the work is urgent, and when we're talking about students in first, second, third grade, when we know that if they fall behind at that point, especially with their literacy skills, that the recovery period is so much longer. Urgency ended up becoming my word of the year that year. In my morning announcements, we have weekly words, we have an academic word, we have a leadership word, but the word of the year that year was urgency. And Reading Rescue certainly fits in with this idea of urgency. They do a fantastic job in capturing the most critical moment and making sure that we're able to bring our students back at the moment when the potential for the loss is so great. Let me tell you a little bit about our school. Stapleton Lighthouse Community School in Staten Island. It's Public School 78. It's about 5 years old. It's just finished my 5th year. It was PS 14 for a long time. It's a phase-out, phase-in school. We are a community school designated by the Department of Education as well as the UFT. We have about 890 students in the school, not a small place. About 10% of our students are E&L, about 30% students with disabilities, and we lose probably about 15 to 20% of our students on every grade every year. It's a very transient community, and we are working on different structures and systems to try to create a way to support those students as they come in and out of our building. Our ELA test score proficiency rates are in the teens. It's been climbing for 5 years, but it's a slow climb, modest improvements, and we're certainly not any place where we need to be. We have about 40 partner organizations as a community school. I am a co-chair on a collective impact project on the North Shore of Staten Island, which keeps me in touch with many of the CBOs in the community, as well as a number of agency leads in Staten Island. We have 4 partnership programs with 3 higher education institutions. We just became a project school with TC this year, and we have a couple of programs with the College of Staten Island as well as Wagner College. It's a very challenged community. We're connected to housing projects. About 95% of our students are eligible for free lunch. And what I've been looking at this past year are the forced placements, the forced relocations for students and families in NYCHA. It seems like there are patterns, and as I'm starting to kind of dig away at some of the data, it's becoming increasingly clear to me that there are structures that we have to address much more clearly. Reading Rescue. I want to start off first by saying that we've been with Reading Rescue for a couple of years. This year we had Katie working with us. You saw Katie in action up there. the enthusiasm and passion that was evident in that video, she brought into my office, she brought to my team, she brought to our community in many different ways. First, I have to congratulate Katie for making it to Staten Island so many times.
All right.
It's, the commute's not easy for some people. The free cruise ride we try to use to entice some, but it doesn't always work. It's known as a forgotten borough for a reason. Katie did not forget about us at any point. The constant support was critical. More critical was that she kind of roped me into the work in a way that I hadn't been before. This past year, there were a few meetings that were first forced upon me, but then I looked forward to. And the data that was shared with us through the course of the year was invaluable. It wasn't just helpful for the students and for the staff members who were involved in the process. It ended up becoming the context and the driving information for larger conversations about the work we had to do in our school and in our community. Tiffany supported our work last year. I think we have Jessica coming on board this year. And Melanie, I only know through constant emails and today finally a face-to-face meeting. But it's a remarkable organization in their commitment and tenacity in supporting the work that has to be done in the school. And when we get back to that idea of urgency, the concept of the rescue, I think that is critical. That constant contact is what's going to keep us moving forward. In-house, we have a handful of staff members who do the work much better than I do, but they're on vacation right now, so you only get me. I have an assistant principal, Jody Contento, who is phenomenal in coordinating all this work, making sure that the scheduling happens the way it needs to happen, making sure the right people are involved, making sure the teachers who are leading the work, because it's really led by a teacher, that those teachers are supported adequately. The other principal commented on the idea of being able to remove the obstacles. There are a couple of things that I think I'm the obstacle and I have to get out of the way. And I think that, it speaks to the way we have to do some of the work. Sometimes the obstacles are actually the structures we have to build on as well. When we recognize that, then it kind of changes our mindset in how this work has to move forward. So the assistant principal manages the work kind of from up high. She lets me know what I need to know. But then we have Tanya Renna, who is our ELA coach, and she's also a TLP, a teacher leadership trainer, and she's the tutor, the lead tutor in the work that we do with Reading Rescue. So having a coach who is going into classrooms, working with teachers, leading the work for Reading Rescue ends up becoming the connecting point for all our staff members in the school building to be able to consider some of the structures that we have in place to support our students, but then incorporate some of the strategies from Reading Rescue into the work that's going on in the rest of the building. Because we know that the individualized instruction is really what's going to make the difference, and having the coach participate in that on a regular basis and provide the supports to the students and the teachers directly, regularly, is what's going to make that happen. In addition to the coach, like my colleague, we keep the U of T very close in this work. So our chapter leader is also an AIS teacher and also one of our leads in the work that we do with Reading Rescue. She is a kindergarten AIS teacher and therefore on board with the process. She's able to speak to the work specifically that Reading Rescue is doing, as well as how it connects and dovetails and plays with the other work that goes on with our AIS and our reading program in the building. Her name is Antoinette Montanti. We also have an upper grade instructional coach and 2 special education teachers. So four teachers rather, doing the work in the school along with 4 paraprofessionals. One of the paraprofessionals, Brittany Jo Baffa, just became a teacher this year, which we're very excited about. She's been working for a long time. I don't know. Sheila Hall just graduated with a bachelor's degree. She's not ready to teach yet, but continuing to move forward. Christina Scheffler, whose students showed the most growth, phenomenal work that she did this year, already holds a BA, and Rania Youssef is the 4th para. She's about 3/4 of the way. I think she holds about 90 credits. I get into a little bit of the personal side of who these paras are and what goes on, because these are people who are striving. These are people who are committed to the work, committed to becoming better educators, committed to making sure that they are doing the best they can with what they have. I would like to, say that they stand out in incredibly remarkable ways, but I've been very fortunate that we have a staff that this is typical of our staff. We have many people in our school who are very dedicated to the students, very dedicated to the work, and these are among them, our best, and this was work that they chose to do. They came to us and decided, this is where we want to be more involved. Is there something we could do? And this program was the right fit. I think now we could probably get to the most fun part, and really it's about the kids. We know the teachers, the educators, they care about the children. I think you can see what Katie did up there. There was a rapport immediately, and when that rapport is established, the children are on board. The one-on-one is critical. The one-on-one lets them know who we are, what we're about, and what we want from them, and we want them to succeed. So we had 10 students at the beginning, and in the course of the year, we added 2 more. So we started off with Taisha, Mohammed, Tresan, Avery, Myelin, Aryeh, Tristan, Nazir, Tamel, Jennifer, and then we added Jada and Syed. All the students were in grade 1. The first 10 students, none of them were above a level C at the beginning of first grade. And the 2 that were added later on in the year were level E. Added later in the year because it speaks to the transient nature of our community that, students come in and out, and we have to continue to find the right students to support. But by the time we got to June, 7 of those students were still receiving the support through Reading Rescue, which means that they started at some point between October and March and finished in the second week of June. Of the 12 who began, 6 of them graduated. That means they reached level I before the end of the school year. I think that speaks to the efficacy of the program and the work of our students and the staff members involved. Intervention's not easy, and we know that. We have different structures for different kinds of supports that are necessary. Data tracking is not easy. Making sure the right work is happening is not easy. But the structure that Reading Rescue provides, the supports that Reading Rescue provides, makes it easier. And the educators know what to look for, how to monitor the progress, and ensure that the instruction is customized to the level of each student. So 6 of them graduated. What happened to the other 6? And 2 of them made it to level H. So if we started off at C and we're looking for I, 2 made it to H, 1 to G, and 2 to F. That's still only 5. 1 student moved from one intervention level to the next, so C to a higher C. But looking at those numbers, 91% of our students in that group were approaching or exceeding standards. And when we compare that to the entire first grade group, not including our self-contained students, we're just about at 40% with that same number. So if we look at that as a larger control group, and it's hard to do, in consistent data ways, but just in a generalized way, I think you can see the validity and the difference that it makes. And the data is louder to me that data is louder to me than anything else. I think with regard to how we function in the school, I said I step out of the way. The teachers, I think authentically I'm a very distributive leader, and therefore the work that we do is both collegial and collaborative, which means that there's an intentionality in the work that goes on. The teachers are, encouraged to take initiative and then supported to do so. And to make all that happen requires people to be able to make decisions and people comfortable being able to do that. I think most of my staff understands the significance of the urgency and the efficacy of Reading Rescue, and I'm grateful that we had the opportunity to bring the program to our school. And I strongly encourage anybody who has the opportunity to bring it to do so, but even further to grow it as much as possible. We have about 50 paraprofessionals in our building, Each year, we're trying to grow the work a little bit more. We know that the paraprofessionals are becoming the agents of change in our school, with, you know, in our community. And as that continues to grow, I think we'll see a much larger impact in the work overall. Are there any questions?
Actually, from the beginning, you noticed, or you mentioned quite a few partnerships. I think you said 40. I'm wondering what made this partnership successful, or the qualities that have led you to help see impact? Is it just the support from the organization, or is there a team? With 40 partnerships to manage, how is this one working so well?
Well, part of the problem is that 40 partnerships is a lot.
Exactly.
I think I overlooked Reading Rescue in the first year, and I shouldn't say as a failure. 40 partnerships, you know, there are things that are closer and more critical with, you know, that impacts a much larger segment of my school community, but the power of this work made me look closer. I remember earlier this year, I looked very closely at one of the data reports, and the data is shared out in a pretty explicit way, and I used to be a data specialist. I did a lot of work with the state accountability system, and looking at how that data was captured and shared out became an easy share for me to go to the rest of our school community with. So I think looking at Reading Rescue as a partner that doesn't only speak to the work that they're doing, but it's actually something that could be shared out to the larger community, makes it easy to work with them as a group, and then see the efficacy in the efforts that are made. Does that answer it?
Absolutely, thank you.
I think there was another hand up in that same,
No, I was pointing to her.
Oh, okay.
You're being recorded, but it's your wife,
Yes.
so if you get blackmailed,
I have to thank my wife for being here today, by the way. It's still vacation time, so we're trying to get together as much together time. Thanks, Jess. And thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Not to harp on the paraprofessional and the contract and whatnot, but can you talk a little bit about where the paraprofessionals are utilizing the program and working with the students?
So we don't have the same space availability that might be in other places, so then most of the time it's happening in hallways just outside of classrooms. Try to find a fairly quiet spot. We actually have a handful of service providers who use the hallway spaces. Our English as new language teachers are doing that work in alcoves in the hallways, and our Reading Rescue tutors are doing the same work in those same spaces. But it's small groups for the E&L students, and it's one-to-one with the paraprofessionals.
Thank you.
And you were able to send all of your paraprofessionals to the Reading Rescue training?
Yes, everybody was trained. Am I speaking truth there, Katie? Okay, thank you. The commitment to the training, our teachers go to the Teachers Leaders Program. I mean, these are things that you have to release your staff in order to make sure that they are going to be as effective as possible. It's not easy, but it's critical. It's critical to grow their practice as well. And we should be doing the same as leaders, administrators, and even coaches. It goes all the way through.
This is a question from my principal as well as myself, but I think like our biggest struggle is getting not necessarily buy-in, but kind of buy-in when they already have very strict schedules as it is, and how the focus is you have to be teaching every single. I don't know. It's been hard to get people on board to take time away from whether it's like their lunch or their prep to do the Reading Rescue. So do you have any suggestions or advice?
So with the paraprofessionals, it's a little bit easier. These are one-to-one paras, and the times that they are scheduled, it's coordinated or programmed to be when the students are pulled out, when their one-to-one students are being pulled out for services.
Okay.
So that changes one part of the programming piece, makes it a little bit easier, so they're not giving up a prep. you know, they're paras, but that's, you know, even different. You know, they're not giving up a lunch. Now, with regard to the teachers who are connected to the work, it's an AIS teacher, a coach, and 2 special education teachers, and they're ICT teachers. So I guess I shouldn't talk more about the ICT teachers,
Right,
you know, beyond where I am, but honestly, they are giving up their preps.
right.
The AIS and the coach, they make this part of their program. So this way they could speak to the work very, very explicitly and very clearly with direct experience on how it functions in the school.
Unlike the principal who spoke a little bit earlier, a lot of the pullout was happening during guided reading time. Is it happening during guided reading in your school, or is it happening whenever their one-to-one student is out of the room? There's no.
So the one-to-ones aren't usually pulled out during guided reading, so that ends up being, it serves 2 functions in that situation.
Okay.
As a principal, did you feel that when you looked at this program compared to other programs, you could get more bang for your buck? I mean, this is one-on-one for the student. How do you feel about, how do you deal with that when there are other programs that, like Wilson, you can service a large quantity of?
You know, I have the assistant principal, Jody Contento, who coordinates the work. She was a reading recovery teacher. And she schooled me, you know, pretty clearly on what kind of structural pieces we need to have in place in order to have a successful intervention program. I'm not going to pretend to be able to talk about the boxes and have all these things. That's not where most of my world is. I know what they are. I'm able to support it as needed and know the value of it. But as far as speaking to the research, it's a little tougher for me. What I will tell you though is that having staff members who are committed to the work, knowing that it's effective, makes all the difference. And having an AP able to lead that work initially and then turn it over to a coach, and the coach turning it over to an AIS teacher, and the AIS teacher happens to be the chapter leader, supporting that work for paraprofessionals to continue their professional growth and development. I think that builds a cycle of a really phenomenally high-performing culture in the school around instructional practice.
I have a second question, it has nothing to do, did you catch any fish that day?
2 skates, it was a bad day.
Kayakers.